Polynomials. They usually have this form. F of x equals, and you're going to see a lot of variables here. A sub n times x to the n plus a sub n minus 1 times x to the n minus 1 plus dot 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 all the way down to a sub 1 times x plus a sub 0. Okay, where a is some coefficient, some number. And then we usually start with the highest power of x and we kind of work our way down, right? That's usually the standard form that we write for polynomials. So for example, you might see something like this. F of x equals 2x to the 4th minus 5x cubed, I'll skip a term, plus 7x minus 8. That's a polynomial. I start with the highest power and I start working my way down. I have 2x to the 4th, I have negative 5x to the 3rd, I have 0x squared, so I usually don't write that, and then I have a positive 7x, and then I have a negative 8 back there at the end. That's an example of a polynomial. Those are polynomials because they have powers on the x's that are both positives and integers. So you don't see any fractional powers, you don't see any negative powers. That's kind of what makes something a polynomial. Some terms you'll want to know. Leading coefficient. What?
Is that an I or a 1 with a dot? The one that's
It's a 1.
on the left of the x?
Here?
No, the next x. Yeah.
A sub n minus 1.
Okay, there was just a dot, so I didn't know if it was an I.
Oh, I see. Yep. Maybe a little time sign right there.
Oh, okay.
Yep. What are coefficients?
Numbers in front of the...
Numbers in front of variables, right? So logically, in my example, what would you guess is our leading coefficient?
Two.
Just 2. Okay, not just this number right here. The leading coefficient would be 2. Okay, the leading coefficient is the coefficient that's on the term with the highest power. It should be here, unless it's written in the wrong order. Okay, so you might need to write things in the correct order. And the correct order means you start with the highest power and you work your way down. Okay, so my leading coefficient is 2. Negative 5 is a coefficient, it's just not a leading coefficient. 7 is another coefficient, it's just not a leading coefficient. A leading coefficient is the coefficient on the first term when it's written in the correct order. Okay? Alright? Negative 8 back here is not a coefficient because it's not in front of a variable. It is called a constant, so make sure you know that vocabulary as well. Okay? A constant is just the term that is set in stone. Alright? There are no variables multiplied with it. Negative 8 is staying negative 8 all the time. Okay? That is called our constant. Another term you'll hear me use a lot is degree. Degree of a polynomial. Does anybody recall that one? Basically, it is the sum of the exponents on the term with the highest power. Okay? Or in this case, it would just be 4. Okay? The degree of this polynomial is 4 because that's the highest powered term you see. So 2x to the fourth is a term, it has an exponent of 4. Negative 5x cubed is a term, it has an exponent of only 3. 7x is a term, it only has an exponent of 1. Negative 8 is a term, it really has an exponent of x to the 0th power if you really want to do x having a power back there. Okay? So degree is basically the highest power that you see within a polynomial. I'm going to do a couple more here because I want to go a little bit more into degree. I have 8x squared minus 7. What is the degree? 2. If I had 9x cubed minus 8x to the 6th plus 9x, I wrote that in the wrong order, but what is the degree?
6.
6. Okay? So the degree is 2. The degree is 6. Most of the ones we'll be dealing with only have one variable, alright, but they can have multiple variables, okay? So if I had 9x cubed y squared plus 10xy, in this case my degree would be 5, because this term has a degree of 5, because I add the powers on the variables together. So the degree of that term is 5, the degree of this term is 1 plus 1 or 2, so the term that had the highest degree would be this one, and that would make the degree of that polynomial 5. We're not really going to be working much with multivariable polynomials, but in case you ever see that again or on a standardized test, the degree represents the highest power, or when you have multiple variables, the sum of those powers, the highest sum you get on any of the terms within the polynomial. Yeah?
Would the constant be a 7 or a negative 7?
Up here, the constant is negative 7.
Okay, so you do go by the starting number.
Oh yeah, yeah, yep, yep. Remember, negatives are just adding opposites.
Yeah.
So, all right. We good on degree? Okay. Let's see. So I talked leading coefficient, constants, degree. I've talked just regular coefficients, right? 2 is a coefficient, negative 5 is a coefficient, 7 is a coefficient. Okay. Terms. The terms of a polynomial are basically split by addition and subtraction signs. So 2x to the fourth is a term, negative 5x cubed is a term, 7x is a term, negative 8 is a term. This polynomial has 4 terms in it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you hear me talk about terms, everybody's good with that? Okay? 2x to the fourth is a term, negative 5x cubed is a term, 7x is a term, negative 8 is a term. Okay? And then within that, within the terms, we have some vocabulary. Monomial, binomial, trinomial. I've hinted that these kind of belong within the terms idea, so you want to take a guess on what these mean? One term, 2 terms, 3 terms. Okay, you guys have seen that vocabulary before? Okay. There's probably special names for 4 terms, 5 terms, 6 terms, 7 terms, and so on, okay? But for the most part, we'll just call them polynomials. Poly means many, right? Monomial means it's 1 term. So here's an example of a monomial. There's an example of a binomial, and so on. I think you guys got the idea there, right? We can also give them names. This would be a linear term. This would be a linear monomial. Any idea why this is linear?
It's
It's not cubed, it's not squared, it's just x to the what power? First, like y equals mx plus b, right? A line. Is that alright? Okay. This would be called a cubic binomial. A cubic binomial. It's a binomial because it has two terms. Why do you think it's cubic? Got a power of 3 as its highest power. Okay? So cubic. So you got linear, you got cubic. Somebody give me a quadratic trinomial. Quadratic. Just any quadratic trinomial. Quadratic is going to have what power? No. No.
2.
Yeah. So give me a quadratic trinomial.
8x.
8x squared.
Minus 3.
Great. There you go. There's a quadratic trinomial. Okay? Quadratics mean x squared, right? The quadratic formula always works to help you solve any x squared equation. You got linear, you got cubic, you got quadratic. You can call them quartic and quintic for powers or degrees of 4 and 5, but that's not a big deal. They don't come up too often. A couple of characteristics. Of polynomials. They are always continuous functions, meaning you can draw them without taking your pencil off the paper. They're nice continuous functions. There's no asymptotes, there's no holes, there's no jumps. Okay, they're continuous functions. Their domain will be all real numbers, so everything from negative infinity to positive infinity. And we've talked about these other ones just a little bit. All the variables have what type of powers? Positive and integers. Okay? Have positive integer powers. Okay? And it can involve more than one variable, but we don't work with too many of those. Okay, so just a quick checking for understanding for me here. Everybody got that? Is this a polynomial?
Yes.
Yes, because all the powers are positive and integers. So yes, it's a polynomial. How many terms does it have? 3, therefore it is a trinomial. What is the degree of this polynomial? 3. How can you tell?
The largest.
The highest exponent, it's the highest power. Because its degree is 3, what name could you give it? Cubic. Okay, so if you want to put it all together, you could call it a cubic trinomial. Okay? What's the leading coefficient?
-2.
-2. What is the constant?
8.
8. Name for me all of the coefficients.
-2, -9, and 8. No, not 8.
-2 and -9. 8 is not a coefficient, it is a constant. Okay? So how do you feel on the terminology that we've done so far? So far so good? Okay? Tell me why this one is not a polynomial.
It's not all
It's
positive.
the x in the denominator, so it's a rational function.
It'd be a rational function because that last x has what for a power? A -1. Can't have negative power, right? Right? Anytime you see x in the denominator, it's a negative power. So this one is not a polynomial.
So you could have x in the numerator.
Aren't all of these x's in the numerators right here? Right?
Yeah.
Okay?
Ask you a random question that isn't actually about the test.